How did that make you feel, looking at your emails from your constituents?
And voting for it, how did it make you feel voting for it?
Well, firstly, it was a difficult situation that we've been put in, and it's a really difficult situation for the Treasury to have to make this decision after coming into government and finding this hidden £22 billion black hole. So it's difficult, and this will obviously ensure that it's means testing that benefit. And when it comes to our inboxes, it is tough for all MPs, but, you know, we've come into government, we have to deal with that, and it's making sure that we section out those that need our help immediately so that we can advise them on some of the help that they can get, and there is lots of options for that, essentially.
But the politics, Gareth Davis, I mean, you've been in the Treasury, certainly you're shadowing the Treasury now. You know these ideas are put forward by civil servants, but taking away 300 quid from 10 million voters is quite a tough message to sell.
Yes, and I was in the Treasury. I was Minister responsible for helping support people like pensioners. I know the decisions that you have to make, and it is sometimes difficult, but I think what the public are struggling to understand is how, on the one hand, you can hand massive pay rises to train drivers while at the same time taking money away from pensioners. I think that's the difficulty that the public are having with this decision.
And here we go, it's PMQs back in the chamber with Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This weekend we remembered the late Queen and her enduring legacy of service and devotion to our country. And I was proud to announce a new national monument located at St James's Park to honour her memory. And I know the whole House will join me in sending our best wishes to the Princess of Wales as she completes her treatment. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon we'll introduce the Renters' Rights Bill. After years of inaction, this government will oversee the biggest levelling up of renters' rights in a generation, and I urge the whole House to get behind it. And later this week I'll visit Washington to meet President Biden for a strategic discussion on foreign policy. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in the House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Torsten Bell. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Back in the 1990s, the Conservatives claimed that the minimum wage would cost 1 million jobs. Instead, low earners have seen the fastest pay rises year after year, with no effect on employment. Year after year, which they oppose. Today, and under their watch, 1 million workers are on 0 hours contracts, and over a million people have no sick pay whatsoever, facing risks that nobody in this House would bear. The details matter, but it is outdated nonsense.
Order. Please sit. One, it's easier if you face me, I can hear it better. But the second part is it's meant to be a question, not a statement. No, I decide. Prime Minister, don't I?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Economic growth is our #1 mission, and that's why we forged a new positive relationship with business. But too many people are insecure at work, and that holds them back and holds our economy back. This government was elected to deliver for working people, and that is exactly what we will do.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister in his words about Her late Majesty the Queen, but also in his words about the Princess of Wales? She's been in the thoughts of everyone across the country, and I know everyone in the House will be delighted and relieved at the progress that she has made. May I also, Mr. Speaker, take this opportunity to pay tribute to Nicholas Howard. This is his last Prime Minister's questions after supporting 8 consecutive Prime Ministers through these sessions. Never my favourite part of the week, but his commendable service made it far more manageable. Mr. Speaker, yesterday Labour MPs voted to remove the winter fuel payment from over 10 million British pensioners, including those with just £13,000 of income. With that decision debated and made, it is now important that the House understands the full consequences of the government's choice. So can I very specifically ask the Prime Minister, will he now publish the impact assessment before the House rises?
Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is this. They left a £22 billion black hole, and they hid it from the OBR. Richard Hughes is absolutely clear. It's the largest year-ahead overspend outside of the pandemic. Now, of course, when it comes to mitigations and impacts, we put those in place, ramping up pension credit, dealing with housing benefit and linking it, something the party opposite didn't do for years, and because of the tough decisions that we're making to stabilise the economy, we can make sure that the triple lock shows that increases in pensions will outstrip any loss of payments. But before he complains about us clearing up his mess, perhaps he'd like to apologise for the £22 billion black hole.
Mr. Speaker, this has got... Mr. Speaker...
I want to hear the question.
Mr. Speaker, when I was in government, I delivered record increases in the state pension. We protected the winter fuel payment and we gave pensioners cost of living benefits. He's the one that's taking money away from pensioners on £13,000, Mr. Speaker. But this has got nothing to do with the public finances. His own Chancellor just this morning, his MPs may not have been listening to her, his own Chancellor this morning admitted that she would prefer it if this policy didn't even raise any money, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the government would not have made this decision without an impact analysis. And yesterday, the Energy Minister confirmed that. So I ask, very simply again, why won't he publish the assessment now?
Mr. Speaker, I remember the days when the Conservative Party was to be concerned about balancing the books. They've left a £22 billion black hole. Responsibility for this decision lies there. The only way to rebuild our country and invest in our public services and make sure everyone is better off is if we clear up their mess and deal with the £22 billion black hole. But, Mr. Speaker, last week we learned that the Shadow Housing Secretary was calling for means testing of winter fuel payments. Now it turns out that the Shadow Paymaster General agrees with her and even boasted about texting his own mother saying she didn't need the payment. Until he apologises for the mess they've created, he's no position to criticise the action that we're taking.
Mr. Speaker, they're shouting now, but those arguments didn't even convince 50 of his own MPs, who suddenly found that they had urgent business elsewhere yesterday, Mr. Speaker. But we know why he's hiding the impact assessment. The Labour Party's own previous analysis claimed that this policy could cause 3,850 deaths. So are the numbers in his impact assessment higher or lower than that?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're taking this decision to stabilise the economy. That means we can commit to the triple lock. By committing to the triple lock, we can make sure that payments of state pension are higher, and therefore there's more money in the pocket of pensioners, notwithstanding the tough action that we need to take. But he goes around pretending that everything's fine. That's the argument he tried in the election. And that's why he's sitting there and we are sitting here.
Mr. Speaker, today pensioners watching will have seen that the Prime Minister has repeatedly refused to admit or to publish the consequences of his decision, and we will continue holding him account for that. But changing topics, Mr. Speaker, today is Back British Farming Day, where we recognise that British farmers produce food that is higher quality, has higher welfare standards and higher environmental standards than imported food. And at a time of increasing global volatility, they are also crucial for our food security and national security. Can he therefore confirm, whether he will be adopting the NFU's recent proposal to enshrine a national food security target in law?
Prime Minister.
Well, food security is really important. I'm glad he's raised that. We have talked to the NFU about this, and rural issues are really important, and that's what we fought the election on, where we've got a lot of rural constituencies sitting behind me now. Continue to talk to the NFU. We do take food security very, very seriously.
I'm not sure I did hear a specific answer, Mr. Speaker, but farmers also do great work to preserve the beauty of the British countryside, and something I'm sure that the Prime Minister will appreciate, given his newfound preference for landscapes over political portraiture. But when it comes to land use, When it comes to land use, there are currently protections in place to ensure that the most productive farmland is used for food production rather than alternatives like solar. So does he agree that it is not appropriate or right that developers with a vested interest grade the quality of that farmland themselves? And will he look at making that process independent?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, rural communities were neglected under the last government. Confidence was at an all-time low, and thousands of food and farming businesses have been forced out of business. Now, of course, we will work with them. Of course, we'll get the balance right, but we're again picking up, clearing up the mess and rebuilding our country.
Mr. Speaker, as a glimpse, in Wales, the Labour government hammered farmers, hitting them with top-down eco-targets. And Labour's own assessment of those plans said that it would lead to thousands of job losses, less food security, and destroy rural incomes, while farmers described it as bleak and damaging. So can he reassure English farmers that he won't threaten their livelihoods, and can he rule out imposing those same top-down targets here?
Prime Minister.
We will work with farmers across the whole of the United Kingdom, as we've made clear, to support them. But here we are, absolutely clear, no contrition, no responsibility for the economic black hole, the broken NHS, the prison crisis, the ruinous legacy of 14 years of failure. We've started rebuilding the country, renters reform, house building, GB Energy, National Wealth Fund, Border Security Command, I could go on. Whilst they try to rewrite history, we're getting on with building a better country for the future.
Madam Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will firstly join me in paying our respects to Lieutenant Rodri Lyshan, who tragically passed away last week. My thoughts are with the family, loved ones, HMS Queen Elizabeth crew during this very difficult time. Mr. Speaker, housing in Portsmouth is in dire straits. But local residents in Portsmouth North have valid concerns around population density, infrastructure and the environment. So I'm glad this government is working on delivering affordable housing in the city. Can the Prime Minister ensure that the infrastructure is properly considered and that communities are involved in the planning process for any new developments?
Can I start by saying I'm sure the whole House will want to join me in sending condolences to the family of Lieutenant Lyshan. I agree with her on the desperate need for affordable housing, and that's why we're going to deliver the biggest social and affording housing uplift in a generation. We will get Britain building again 1.5 million houses, because the dream of home ownership was snuffed out under the last government.
We now come to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Red Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the comments made earlier by the Prime Minister about our amazing late Queen, and also join him in sending our best wishes to Her Royal Highness Princess of Wales. I don't think anyone could have not been moved by her powerful video, and we hope that she'll make a full and speedy recovery. When it comes to fighting cancer, we know all too well that every day counts. But in the last year of the last government, there were over 100,000 patients waiting more than 2 months just to start their urgent cancer treatment, the worst on record. So will the Prime Minister help boost cancer survival rates by guaranteeing that every patient can start their cancer treatment within 62 days?
Well, I thank him for that question on a really important issue, and there's a report out by Lord Darcy tomorrow which will set out in stark terms the failure in terms of cancer treatment under the last government, which is a really serious issue. This timeline matters, which is why we're taking steps straight away to make sure that we can comply with that timeline, because lives depend on it, and that's why we've already taken a decision to put more scanners in to catch this early and use technology. It's a very serious issue, very serious failure by the last government.
David. Prime Minister, for that answer, and also look at the plans that the government is putting forward. Last night, Liberal Democrats voted against the withdrawing of winter fuel payments. We believe it's just wrong to balance the books by removing the support from pensioners. But we do understand that there are some difficult choices to be made to clear up the appalling financial mess left by the last Conservative government. One of the many reasons for that mess was the Conservatives prioritising tax cuts for the big banks, costing £4 billion a year.
Pay more tax.
So, will the Prime Minister instead reverse those cuts so that we can afford to support millions of struggling pensioners through this very hard winter?
Well, I'll resist the temptation to get ahead of the budget. But look, what is important is that we recognise that there is this £22 billion black hole that's been left by the previous government. Now, I know that their practice was ignore it, to kick it into long grass. We're taking the tough decisions because I'm absolutely convinced that's the only way we can start rebuilding our country, investing in our public services and making sure that everybody is better off.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My Southport constituency has experienced a difficult summer. Firstly, I want to reiterate that our thoughts are with the families of Alice, Bibi and Elsie, who tragically lost their lives in the attack in July. I welcomed the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary to our town in the weeks that followed, and we worked together to find further ways to bring our community together. Can I therefore ask the Prime Minister to take this opportunity to recommit the government's support for our town for those grieving and affected by the tragic attack?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for that question, and we stand with those who tragically lost their loved ones in this heinous attack. I did go up to Southport the day after and went back actually 3 days after that on a private visit to meet some of the first responders who had been at the scene and simply to say thank you to them. I can't tell the House how angry I was when I got back to London and saw that those same officers who had responded were having things thrown at them by far-right thugs. Mr. Speaker, we will work tirelessly to support his constituents, and I thank him as well for his hard work in this difficult time, working with Sefton Borough Council and Liverpool City Region Combined Authority to deliver a support package. The community has endured this horrendous event, should be supported, and I know will be, across the whole House.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we witnessed some extraordinary celebratory scenes outside Britain's prisons where, in some cases, serious career criminals were released. And this to make way for, yes, rioters, but equally those who've said unpleasant things on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. Does the Prime Minister understand there is a growing feeling of anger in this country that we are living through two-tier policing and a two-tier justice system?
I'm angry to be put in a position of having to release people who should be in prison because the last government broke the prison system. And the Prime Minister was repeatedly warned. He had his own release scheme. He was repeatedly warned that he had to adopt the scheme that we put in place. The former Justice Minister said if we don't do it, we'll have to get down on our knees and pray. The police chiefs made it absolutely clear in a letter to him before the election that he needed to take action, saying that they wouldn't be able to discharge their duties and saying the risk was loss of an ability to detain suspects. That means, Mr. Speaker, an inability to arrest people committing offences. That's how bad it was, and they warned the Leader of the Opposition that further delays until after the general election will increase the risk significantly. What did he do? He delayed and increased the risks.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the government's swift action to bring railways back into public ownership. Great British Railways will deliver much-needed reform, ensuring the network serves both passengers and rail freight effectively. So can the Prime Minister explain how Labour's ambitious railway plan will also deliver improvements to rail infrastructure to ensure my constituents get the service they deserve at Luton Station?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising that important matter. One of the first bills that we introduced was to reform our railways after 14 years of chaos. Great British Railways will unite track and train under a single leadership, and that means closer collaboration across the industry and faster, more effective decisions on critical infrastructure. And I know how vital that will be in relation to both Luton and Leagrave stations in her constituency. We're carefully considering the best approach, but I can assure her we're committed to ensuring our railways will be open to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Back British Farming Day. The previous government let our farmers down and in their incompetence underspent the farming budget by £100 million. Will the Prime Minister deny rumours that his government plans to take advantage of the Conservatives' failure by removing that £100 million permanently? Farmers across the country want to know that the Prime Minister will increase the agriculture budget, as the Lib Dem manifesto proposed, to speed up the rollout of the new environmental land management schemes to support profitable, sustainable and nature-friendly farming.
Well, I thank you for that question. It is a really important issue, and our rural communities were neglected by the previous government, and that's why confidence is at an all-time low. And what we will do is to protect farmers from being undercut in trade deals, make the supply chain work more fairly, and prevent shock rises in bills by switching to GB energy. We won't preempt the budget in relation to this, but we will put the support in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of my constituents, including those at Chapel Gate, have told me about the so-called management agents who charge them rip-off service fees and then fail to provide even the most basic of maintenance. Many of them spend hours each week battling with these agents just to ensure that they and their neighbours are not fleeced in their own homes. Will the Prime Minister recommit this government to act where the previous government failed to reform the leasehold system, which is archaic, outdated and feudal?
Prime Minister. Well, can I first welcome the first ever Labour MP for Basingstoke? And yes, we will reiterate our commitment to act to bring the feudal leasehold system to an end and ensure leaseholders can benefit from more rights, power and protections over their homes.
Mr. Speaker, international law is clear. Dropping £2,000 bombs on densely populated civilian areas is a crime. And it's beyond dispute that Israel has used F-35s to do exactly that. Yet the government has chosen to exempt F-35 components from the arms licence suspension, when all it had to do was say that Israel could not be the end user if UK manufactured parts were included. Last week, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister stood at that dispatch box and he said, we either comply with international law or we do not.
That's right.
Why has he chosen not to?
Prime Minister.
We are complying with international law. We've set out our reasoning, and I think all fair-minded members of the House would support the decision that we've taken. The most important thing now is that we get a ceasefire in place. That is one of the topics that I'll be discussing on Friday, to ensure that the remaining hostages can come out, that aid that's desperately needed can go in, and we can start the process to a two-state solution, which is the only way to lasting peace.
Fife has a proud defence heritage, and in my constituency of Dunfermline and Dollar, that continues with the dockyard at Rosyth constructing Type 31 frigates for the Royal Navy, along with a local supply chain of local SMEs. So will the Prime Minister ensure the Strategic Defence Review team visits areas of strategic importance such as Fife, so they can engage fully with the local supply chain and ensure the SDSR supports Britain's security as well as local economies?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for that question and for championing his constituency, including the work at Rosyth Dockyard. The Strategic Defence Review will ensure that defence is central both to security and to economic growth and prosperity. The review will consult widely, including across the devolved nations, and I know the reviewers recognise the strategic importance of constituencies like his. And I will ensure that he gets the chance to meet the relevant minister to discuss the particular issues in his constituency.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government committed to a rebuild of Whipps Cross Hospital, the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, and the establishment of a new community.
You have to sit down a minute. Look, I'm determined to hear this question. I don't expect the front bench to be shouting me down, and it won't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government...
Trying to join in again? Brilliant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The previous Conservative government committed to a rebuild of Whipps Cross Hospital, the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, and the establishment of a new community diagnostic centre at St Margaret's Hospital in Epping. Will the new Labour government honour these commitments and progress these projects in full, which are so vital to improving the health services needed by my constituents of Epping Forest? And if it helps the Prime Minister at all with his answer, these services will also help some of the constituents of his Health Secretary just next door in Ilford North.
Prime Minister.
Well, look, he's right to champion the hospitals in his constituency, quite right to do so. The problem with what the last government promised was this. They promised 40 new hospitals. The problem is there weren't 40, they weren't new, and many of them weren't hospitals. So we need to review what we can do and put it on a sustainable, deliverable basis. But we will, and he's right to champion those in his constituency.
Or are being built.
Annalise Bidgley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I met my constituent, Cheryl Corbell, mother of Olivia Pratt Corbell, the 9-year-old tragically murdered in 2022. Cheryl is campaigning for Olivia's Law, which would compel convicted criminals to attend court and face the judge and receive their sentence. Will my right honourable friend commit to supporting Olivia's Law and meet Cheryl to discuss how we can move this forward without delay?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the King's Speech, we confirmed that we intend to introduce legislation this session so courts have the power to order the most serious offenders to attend their sentencing hearings. This is really important, and I know it's felt across the House, because to deprive victims and their families of seeing the sentencing exercise is to deprive them of justice. I will meet Cheryl. I have already met Cheryl and gave her the commitment last August that we would do this, and I repeat it again today, and I would just pay tribute to the campaign that she has led.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Prime Minister was a pensioner earning $11,350 this year and receiving no winter fuel payment, what would he prioritise this Christmas? Heating or eating?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have to be clear why this decision is being made. A £22 billion black hole. And the previous government would walk past these tough decisions, pretend it wasn't there, put it in the long grass. We're not prepared to do that. Because we're taking tough decisions, we can commit to the triple lock, and that means that the state pension will increase by more than any loss of the winter payment allowance. But I would just say this, the biggest impact on pensioners in recent years was when they lost control of inflation, when they allowed energy prices to go through the roof, and we went through a cost of living crisis. We're stabilising the economy to make sure pensioners never ever have to live through that again.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Annabelle is 5 years old and lives in my constituency. She has high-risk neuroblastoma. Annabelle has endured 15 months of chemotherapy, high-dose chemotherapy, stem cell harvest, proton therapy, immunotherapy, hair loss, nasal feeding. Now she urgently needs the drug DFMO, not yet available in the UK. It must be administered within 90 days of the end of immunotherapy. 91 days is too late. Will the Prime Minister please meet with Annabelle's parents to discuss the life-saving care that she needs?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I pay tribute to Annabelle for her incredible bravery and understand how important it is that cancer patients are able to benefit from rapid access to effective new treatments. The manufacturers of this drug have applied for a UK licence through Project Orbis, which allows the rapid review and approval of new cancer treatments. And we'll ensure that process is completed as quickly as possible. And I will also ensure that the Health Minister does set up the meeting that he's asked for.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought that socialism was about taxing those with the broadest shoulders in order to help the most vulnerable. But it appears that Starmer socialism involves scaring those with the broadest shoulders out of the country while taking away the winter fuel allowance of frail 90-year-olds living in drafty homes. Prime Minister apologise to my shivering constituents for his personal choice? And will he reverse this chilling decision?
My choice is to stabilise the economy after 14 years of failure. And I'll tell you for why. Because when a government loses control of the economy, it's working people who pay the price, and I will not let that happen under a Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More than half of people with pancreatic cancer die within 3 months of diagnosis, and 7 in 10 people never even receive treatment. Every 2 minutes in the UK, someone is diagnosed with cancer. But for those diagnosed with the least survivable cancer, time has too often already run out. I'm really proud of the Labour government's commitment to our NHS, but will the Prime Minister now commit to reviewing a long-term cancer strategy so we can improve diagnosis and treatment rates in this country?
Prime Minister.
I thank her for raising this important issue, and it's obviously the second time it's been raised in this session. I'll have a lot more to say tomorrow when I deal with Lord Darcy's report. I pay tribute to her tireless campaigning, particularly in relation to pancreatic cancer. Cancer patients have been failed by the last government, waiting far too long for diagnosis and treatment. We'll get the NHS catching cancer on time, diagnosing it earlier and treating it faster, so more patients survive this horrible set of diseases.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Following Labour's disgraceful political decision to scrap winter fuel payments with little notice to millions of pensioners, will the Prime Minister today rule out scrapping concessionary travel fares and council tax discounts, which also help millions of pensioners across the UK? Yes or no?
As he knows very well, I'm not going to preempt the budget. It will all be set out in due course.
Speaker, can I pass on the heartfelt thanks on behalf of the Bolton Council of Mosques, who greatly appreciated the dedication and leadership that the Prime Minister showed during the recent riots over the summer. Does my right honourable friend agree with me on the importance of supporting interfaith and community groups who play a vital role in bringing people together?
Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising that. And we owe an incredible debt of gratitude to our police for their courage in dealing with the recent disorders. And we took action to ensure they had the resources and powers they needed to tackle violence and restore order to our streets. We also, Mr. Speaker, provided additional security for mosques, ensuring freedom of worship and protection from racist threats. And in the aftermath, we saw communities who really represent Britain coming forward, led by faith groups and community organisations. They showed that unity and demonstrated our values of tolerance and of respect.
Diolch Llefarydd. Denmark has been undergrounding its electricity cables since 2008, building infrastructure and maintaining responsible stewardship of the countryside. The Welsh Labour government's policy is for all new power lines to be placed underground where possible. The UK Labour government favours overhead pylons. Why is his government opposing Welsh colleagues in Wales?
We are absolutely committed to the transition to renewable energy. The reason for that is because it gives us energy independence, it lowers the bills, and of course the next generation of jobs are tied up with it. We have to do it in a cost-effective way, and we'll make those decisions in the cost-effective way.
Jessica Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK steel industry needs a serious government which works in partnership with both businesses and trade unions to secure a transition that's both right for the workforce and delivers economic growth in Wales. We know that deindustrialisation can be devastating to communities, so can the Prime Minister tell me how the government's safeguarding jobs and securing the future of steelmaking communities like ours for generations to come?
Prime Minister.
We're taking every step we can in relation to the steel industry because it's vital that we give it the support that it needs. We need steel in this country. We need steel made in this country, and our plans and our missions mean we're going to need more steel, not less. And it's the duty of the government to ensure jobs and communities and people aren't ignored in the transition and that jobs are protected. And Mr. Speaker, I can say the Business Secretary will provide an update to the House this afternoon.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oxfordshire has seen a huge amount of population growth in recent years without the infrastructure to match.
Why is that?
A new railway station on the Great Western Main Line between Didcot and Swindon, Grove and Wantage, would help to reduce traffic and improve access to both Oxford and London. Does the Prime Minister support investment in our railway, and would he meet with me to hear the case for a new railway station at Grove and Wantage?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable member for raising this important issue, obviously very important for his constituents. And we are committed to putting passengers at the heart of our railways. Great British Railways will work closely with regional government, mayors, operators and passenger groups to ensure rail investment meets the needs of communities. And I will ensure that he gets the meeting that he wants with the relevant minister to discuss the issues in his constituency.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. I'll let the front benches clear.
That was Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer taking questions from MPs in the House of Commons. We heard there, didn't we, there was 3 MPs, including Rishi Sunak, asking about the removal of the winter fuel allowance. That was interesting. Nigel Farage, his first question, I think, as an MP for Reform UK, the leader there, asking about, he called it two-tier policing. Why is the government making space for people who say inappropriate things on social media by moving out career criminals from prisons? We also heard a hint of a Steel announcement at the end there, Gloria.
Yes, indeed. And I just want to say to you listening or watching at home, we have got your brilliant questions. We are going to put them to our fantastic panel, one from the government, one from the Labour Party. But we want to give you a flavour of that statement that the Prime Minister referred to just then. It was in relation to Tata Steel, the steel plant in Port Talbot in South Wales. 2,800 jobs at risk. We want to hear from the Business Secretary, and then we'll put your questions to our panel.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to update the House on the improved deal this Labour government has secured for the workers of Tata Steel, specifically as it relates to their plant in Port Talbot. But as well as setting out the details of this improved deal, I'm also announcing today our ambition for a new UK-wide steel strategy, one which equips our steelmaking industry with the right support, not just to adapt, but to thrive in the new green economy. But before I do so, I want to address the situation we have inherited. Since becoming the Secretary of State 2 months ago, I've had to respond to a series of challenges, not just with the steel industry, but also in shipping, such as Harland and Wolff, and in other areas where the previous government had simply ceased to make decisions and decided to leave them for us to deal with. This was a dereliction of duty, and it has left the steel industry in particular in an extremely perilous position. The last government had been promising a plan for the steel industry for years. With what I'm able to announce today, with the signing of a legally binding deal that enables Tata to order their electric arc furnace as part of a significantly improved package, this government has made more progress in 2 months than they made over the last Parliament. But even if we had started these negotiations a year ago, never mind many years ago, as they had the opportunity to do, I have no doubt we would have secured an even better deal for the community. So I would like to start with an apology to the people of Port Talbot, because they were let down by the previous government. And whilst this deal is much improved, I acknowledge very much it falls short of what would be my ideal. However, I have been to Port Talbot several times. I've met the workforce there, the reps, the generations of families who have literally forged Port Talbot as we know it. And that's why, when Tata first announced they would be closing the blast furnaces with some 2,800 job losses with them, I knew the workforce deserved so much better. I warned my predecessor not to proceed with what they had negotiated. Why? Because I was confident the government could secure a better deal for Tata's workers and a better deal for the people of Port Talbot. And Mr. Speaker, I'm able to announce today that this government has secured that better deal. But I reiterate, had we had the opportunity that the previous government had over so many years, we could have done more. The key features are as follows. I can announce today that we've agreed a process with Tata to assess investment opportunities for new, additional capabilities that will deliver more secure, long-term jobs than the deal that we inherited. This is on top of the plans for the instalment of the electric arc furnace. We have agreed a process with Tata to take this forward, and I'll be able to report back to the House on this progress. But for me, this is the most important element. And I should therefore explain, Mr. Speaker, that the reason I'm announcing this deal now, rather than after this process is complete, is because in order for Tata to secure the build slot for the electric arc furnace, that element needs to be sorted now. Further delays would put the whole project at risk and could lead to a much, much worse outcome. Secondly, in every conversation I've had with Tata's directors, I've stressed the need to avoid compulsory redundancies wherever possible. I've asked them to channel their efforts instead into job matching and retraining so that the steelworkers of Port Talbot, who've dedicated so much to the industry in the past, can now help shape its future as they'll be able to transition and move within the business. But as well as that, Tata are agreeing to offer a comprehensive training programme for any employee as an alternative to those at risk of compulsory redundancy. This would be on full pay for 1 month and then £27,000 a year per employee for 11 months, and Tata will fund all of these costs. Employees will be able to choose from recognised qualifications to develop sought-after skills which will be in high demand in the local economy now and long into the future. We know too that Tata expects that during the construction of the electric arc furnace, at least 500 new jobs could be created, which will tap into the local labour market wherever possible. Thirdly, where we cannot secure new jobs or training, working closely with the unions, I can tell the House that we've helped to secure improved terms on redundancies. Tata's employees are now able to express an interest in the most generous voluntary redundancy package the company has ever offered for a restructuring of this size. Employees will now be paid 2.8 weeks of earnings for each year of service, up to a maximum of 25 years. At the same time, we're ensuring there's a minimum redundancy payment, £15,000 pro rata, and a retention payment of £5,000 for employees leaving the business because of these closures. And over 2,000 members of staff have expressed an interest in voluntary redundancy who will be eligible for these terms. Fourthly, as part of the deal, the company will also be releasing 385 acres of their site.
That's the Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds there saying that the government has found £500 million of cash, but only if Tata Steel can guarantee 5,000 jobs across the UK business to business. Now, we're still joined here in the studio by Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, and Tory MP and Shadow Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, Gareth Davis. If I may, to you first, Mike Tapp. 3 Tory MPs asked questions about the winter fuel allowance. Madeline has emailed in to say, and please do say where you're from, Madeline, next time you get in contact, but great to hear from you. She wanted to express her absolute despair at the news yesterday regarding the vote on the winter fuel payment and pension credit. What would you say to Madeline?
Yeah, thanks for coming to us, Madeline. Look, we've inherited a real mess here from the Conservatives. This black hole has meant that we've had to make some really difficult decisions at Treasury level, and if Madeline lives in my constituency or if not, reach out to your MP and ask that question, are there other benefits that I am eligible for? 900,000 people, for example, are eligible for credit pension that haven't taken that up, and there is other help available too.
Well, that makes the nonsense of the £22 billion, because if all of those people who are entitled to pension credit got pension credit, then there would be no savings.
No, that's not true. That was taken into the accounting when making these decisions too. So I do encourage those to reach out to the members of Parliament. If you're in Dover and Deal, drop me a line, I'll see what I can do.
Gareth, the government make the point that next year the pension will rise by £460. That will more than make up for the £200 or £300 lost in the winter fuel payment. What do you say to that? Because when the Labour government, the last Labour government, introduced this winter fuel payment, is before your government introduced the triple lock. And the argument is one means that the other one is not required. Do you buy that?
No, I don't. And you just have to have a quick conversation with the average pensioner, particularly pensioners who have $13,000 a year at a time when energy prices are going up by 10%, which we've just had announced recently. But look, I think this point about the triple lock is an important one. Since 2010, the pension went up, state pension went up £3,700. It's just gone up by £900. That's good. That's a very good thing. But clearly it's not a good thing to take away support for vulnerable pensioners as we head into a very cold winter. This is a choice by the Labour government, as I say, to pay the unions and take away from pensions. And lots of people are wondering, given Rachel Reeves' interview this morning where she said, actually, it's not about the black hole, the supposed black hole in savings, because their solution is if enough people sign up to pension credit, that's going to cost the Exchequer even more than the savings, so it doesn't make sense.
May I come in on that? Look, we're likely to see further pension rises in the next year because of the triple lock that we're honouring. And I completely reject the notion that we're paying unions. We're not. We're paying doctors. We're paying nurses. We're keeping our trains running. That will benefit everybody. Our economy suffers through people out of work through long-term sickness. We can get people back into work. And look, pensioners need an NHS that functions too. It's your government that's absolutely smashed it into the ground, and we're going to repair those things. And without, our trains running, the economy won't grow. People need to get around.
They've already announced additional strikes. You've given them massive pay rises, and now 2 days later they announced additional strikes by ASLEF. They're completely taking you for fools.
Mike, a quick, simple question to you, yes or no. Why or will your government publish the impact statement that Rishi Sunak says is published along all sides, all government policies? Over in the House Commons lobby right now, we're hearing from my colleague Olivia Utley that it's a lot of pressure being put on the government right now to say they'll publish this document.
Well, I'm not there right now. I haven't spoken to Keir Starmer about this. I'm a backbench MP. I can't make that decision for the government. We know that there are those that aren't published. Perhaps it will be a case of waiting to see what we put into the budget, which is obviously going to help a lot of people too. So we've got a lot to come in terms of the economy. This is just the beginning.
I think, again, the confusing thing is they did publish an impact assessment in 2017 on the impact of if the winter fuel payment was withdrawn.
That was a Labour document then.
It was a Labour document saying that up to 4,000 people, pensioners, old people in their homes would die because of the withdrawal of winter fuel payments. Now they're in government, they're taking it away, and they refuse to conduct an impact assessment.
And we want to know why. That was 7 years ago. And you said yourself earlier in the show that the pension has risen
maybe more than
by over £3,000 since then. So these aren't figures that we recognise.
So you can categorically say today that no pensioners will die as a result of this policy?
I think, look, any policy that you bring in, that's a really difficult question to answer.
It's very clear in 2017 that
this certainly isn't.
suffer.
This policy is not an attack on pensioners. This is about ensuring that we have.
And they feel like they're being attacked.
This is ensuring that we have a stable economy that can grow, and we're honouring the triple lock in the pension, so they will see increases in their pension this year, which is really important.
And you're giving the money to the train drivers, on £60,000 a year
to keep the country moving.
It's the biggest issue today. It's the biggest issue coming through on our emails, but it is not the only one. And I want to put this to you. It's from John. It's a brilliant question, but we'd love to know where you're from, John. You're going to get better at this. Always tell us where you're from. We're a family. We like to know who's getting in touch with us and where you live. John says this, and I'm going to put this to our Conservative spokesperson, our opposition's Conservative spokesperson, still can't get used to it. John asks, what does it say about those released prisoners celebrating their release with champagne? That's on your head, isn't it? You were in power for 14 years. They don't have time to build all those prisons straight away. So it's your mismanagement of the system.
The first thing to say is thank you to John for the question, the opportunity to highlight why we have quite a full prison population. We obviously increased police numbers by 20,000 across the country, and we had tougher sentences as well, both policies, by the way, which were opposed by the Labour Party. So there are more people, more serious criminals in prison now than there were before we took office. And we've made no light of the fact that there is pressure in the system. It's why we embarked on the biggest prison building project and programme since the Victorian age, carving out £4 billion for new prisons.
You wouldn't say this is their fault, would you? You wouldn't claim that the fact that people were released from prison yesterday, cracking open the champagne, celebrating, it's your responsibility. It's 14 years of management.
The Labour Party are in government and they have choices to make. So they've chosen to release prisoners and that's their decision to make. I want to know from the Labour Party if all other options were considered. They've not made that clear.
And Mike, before you answer the question on options, Nigel Farage said it's two-tier justice. He says that there's jail space being created by career criminals leaving the prison system and people who posted difficult comments on social media
It's
taking their places. Was he wrong to say that?
Nigel should know better. People don't go to prison for being difficult or awkward on social media. They go to prison.
There have been jail for some posts on social media. He's right to say
this
that.
has to meet the requirements for the CPS to charge. So let's not be silly here. There will be serious crimes if people are going to prison. We've inherited an absolute mess.
Was the only option to release, as Gareth says?
We only had 100 spaces left in prison, and that is what we've inherited. And we will build more prisons. We'll have a long-term strategy.
What they're going to do about the 12% of the population that are foreign offenders.
And we've just had...
We sent 4,000 home last year.
No. If we're going to move on to the immigration system, that's an absolute mess after the Conservatives were in power for too long. And we've just had the largest deportation flight take-off ever. And I think that shows how seriously we're taking that. That included foreign offenders.
I'm going to stick with you, Mike, from Labour. One viewer says, is the 22 billion black hole the new... My dad was a toolmaker go-to from Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister.
I.e. often repeated by the Prime Minister.
Unfortunately, it's a fact that we've inherited it. I don't find that funny. I find it absolutely devastating that our NHS is in the place that it is, that we haven't got enough police on the streets, that our jobs market is suffering, and the fact that we're having to make these tough decisions. That's what we've inherited from the Conservatives. That £22 billion black hole is an absolute disaster for this country, and we will bring that stability
on that point, Clark says, I would ask our Prime Minister, given the numerous issues they are blaming the previous government for, what exactly do they do when they're in opposition to understand these issues?
When we're in opposition, we hold to account, but when they have a majority that they had under Boris Johnson, there's nothing we can do to really stop those damaging decisions from going through. We saw Liz Truss. She's put hundreds of pounds onto people's mortgages, for example, in such a short period of time. But now with Rachel Reeves, she's an economist, we'll have that stability and growth, but it will take time, and we're going to have to make those difficult decisions, which obviously we're seeing.
Nigel says also, not Nigel Farage, we assume, not him anyway, Nigel says to us, where's the plan going forward, the policies for growth, the plan for prosperity? I think voters are getting tired of the rhetoric about the past.
It has only been 8-9 weeks.
It's not a lifetime.
No, and I think the social media culture that we have does breed a little bit of impatience, and I just ask that we stick with us with the plan, and it will take time to get into place.
Labour are in government now. They're making decisions. They've got to stand by those decisions. They've got to move on from just their playbook, which is attacking the Conservatives for everything and blaming everybody else but themselves. They have to explain how, on the one hand, you can pay union workers billions of pounds, you can set up an energy company that's not going to produce any energy for £8 billion, while at the same time taking 1.5 billion away from pensioners. If this black hole exists, then how can you make all those commitments to the union?
Did you think, Mike Chapp, this decision on the fuel allowance might be your tuition fees moment that hung around the Lib Dems like an albatross?
We've got to remember, this is a means-tested benefit. 1.3 million pensioners will still receive that, and I think that's really important to realise. And there is help for those that do fall between the cracks, and we do reach out to MP, and certainly in Dover I'll be helping where I can.
Mike, from Labour, I want to ask you a constituency question, but it actually goes to a wider point.
Yes.
Stop the votes.
Yes.
It was, you are the MP for Dover. That's why I'm asking this specifically to you. Rishi Sunak promised to stop the votes. He didn't stop the votes.
No.
The vote's still coming. What is your measure of success?
Right. 300 crossed in 2018. Since then, we've had 136,000. That's on the Conservatives' watch. So we're putting in place a plan that's sensible and pragmatic. It'll bring in the likes of MI5 to take out the smuggling gangs. And we're also deporting record numbers. So the largest flight of deportation took place a few weeks ago, and that shows how seriously we're taking this.
OK. Well, that's it from us. Thanks to Labour MP for Dover and Deal, Mike Tapp, and Tory MP and Shadow Exchequer to the Treasury, Gareth Davis.
Coming up is Good Afternoon Britain with Emily Carver and Emma Webb. We can say a brief hello. No, we can't, but we know it's going to be a fantastic show ahead, because it always is, even when Tom Harwood's not there.
It's going to be a thrilling show coming ahead. That's all from us. See you, well, after the party conference. Have a great party conference.
See you from Labour next week.
Of course, can't wait.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It feels more like October or November out there today. A distinctly chilly winds. A few sunny spells, but also most places seeing plenty of showers. Here's the reason why. Low pressure sitting up to the northeast, and north or northwesterly winds bringing the air down, bringing that chill and bringing plenty of showers packing in over northwest England, extending down to the Midlands, north and west Wales, northern and western parts of Scotland. Parts of eastern England, southwest England and southeast Scotland may not see any showers, could stay largely dry and bright here, but elsewhere expect showers to come and go, and everywhere you can expect to feel the chill. Temperatures struggling into the mid-teens at best. It feels even colder with that wind, which will be quite gusty, particularly close to the showers. A few are likely to filter down towards the southeast through this evening, and maybe the southwest as well, but lots of showers for Wales, northwest England, coming and going across Northern Ireland. Northeast England, southeast Scotland may well be mostly dry through the afternoon, but the showers continuing to come in across northern and western Scotland, where the winds are strongest. It really does feel chilly out here, and it's going to be a pretty cold evening and an even colder night. We'll continue to see some showers drifting in over north and west Wales, northwest England, but they should tend to ease across the Midlands. Showers keep going in northern Scotland, but many areas just becoming clear. The winds will ease a touch as well, and that will allow those temperatures to drop 5 or 6 degrees. That's towns and cities, many rural areas not far off freezing, in fact below across a good part of rural Scotland. So yes, a real chill for Thursday morning. Another day of sunshine and showers, but not as many showers. Still plenty for north and west Wales and northern Scotland, but a drier day for southwest Scotland, northwest England. And again, much of the east will be dry and fine. Chilly, but the winds won't be as strong tomorrow.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible. Good luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at this story in the Telegraph, Charlie. And this is about Anglican Church, the Church of England, dropping the word church in favour of something a bit more modern sounding. Words such as community. Why are we afraid of the word church?
Well, that's my question. I mean, you've got to assume that they think it solves some kind of problem. But I think, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about their particular religious institution, whatever they all have different names, don't they? And if you rename one, do you have to rename all of them? Can we no longer use an individual name for different religions, community buildings?
Are you religious?